everyone. And again, everyone. And again, all together.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, and again, everyone, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, and again, everyone, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Shri Harinam Sankirtan. Radha Gopinath. Shri Shri Gaurnitai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Premanand. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us for the Wisdom Tree. Tonight we're in our new Vrinda Valley Hall. How does it feel? All right? Yeah, good. We're here in the hall because we have a Wisdom Tree special event tonight. We're delighted to have with us one of our very dear friends. We've known Vraja Bihari for too long. Jagatrini's got 4 of her fingers up with a 0 for 40 years. She's known Vraja Bihari. I've probably known him for about 30. And the thing we all share in common is our love for a place in India called Vrindavan. And that's where we have spent time. Because actually, I believe this is Vraja Bihari's first visit to Perth after 40 years. We finally convinced him to come and visit. But we're delighted to have him with us. When he's not in Vrindavan, he has some fascinating work that he does.
I'll introduce myself.
Okay.
Because I glorify myself better than you.
Truly, I would make an absolute mess of that part. So I'm going to leave you all with Vraja Bihari for tonight's presentation. Please enjoy the lemonade.
Yeah. So I'll just, quick, this is too loud, isn't it?
Can we adjust that?
Is there a way to turn it down?
Sure we can.
So I just thought I'd introduce myself if this photo comes up.
I'm so glad you didn't leave that to me.
Usually. Anyway, it's a picture of me when I was 16 years old. There it is. I'm in the red shirt and pulling Srila Prabhupada's, this is Rath Yatra in 1976 in New York City, the first Rath Yatra in New York. And that's me with the head of hair, pulling the cart. That was my only time I saw Srila Prabhupada. But then I went to university for 2.5 years and I dropped out of school to become a monk. And that's me as a monk. You can tell I'm a monk because my shoelaces are untied, which is standard operating procedure for any monk. Yeah. And I did that for about 12 years. And then I got married. Don't ask how a monk gets married. It's a whole process. And then we moved to Vrindavan, as Sri Radharaman Prabhu was saying. And we lived there for 21 years. And that's my wife and my son. He was born in Vrindavan, and she was running a school in Vrindavan. And that was when he was getting initiated in Dallas, Texas. And let's see, that's just a picture of me with my good friend Kadamba Maharaj. And when we lived in India, I was helping His Grace Bhurijana Prabhu with the Vrindavan Institute for Higher Education, but also I went back to school I didn't have a bachelor's degree, but I got a master's degree in conflict resolution. And I started working for the Supreme Court in India. So this is me giving a talk with the Chief Justice of India and President and all the high court judges around the country. I did that for about 8 years working in India. And then we moved back to America, and I started working for the U.S. government. And I still do work for NASA in conflict resolution. I don't know anything about space rockets or anything. So that's a little introduction about myself. Now, to get to the real, if my computer's gonna. Okay, so today's topic. So start with a story. Probably a number of you know this story already, but there was this king who was sharpening one of his swords, and by accident he cut his finger off. Not a very nice thing. And his minister at that time, here's, I have an advancer here. This might work. Yeah. I'm giving away the plot if I show that too early. His minister said, "Wow, that's God's mercy." And it's like if you go through some problem in life and someone said, "Oh, that's God's mercy." I feel like giving you some of God's mercy. We're not always ready to hear that, right? When it first happened. So he also wasn't ready. He was quite upset, and he threw his minister into jail, in the smelly, damp, terrible food jail. And he went touring his kingdom. And as he was touring his kingdom, he got captured by some worshippers that wanted to offer him as a human sacrifice to their deity. Is this okay? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so they were just about to kill him. And then they noticed that he was missing a finger. And they said, "Well, we can't kill him. We can't offer So he went back to his kingdom, and he released his minister from jail right away, and he said, "You're right. Oh my God, that was really God's mercy. That was Krishna's mercy." Then he said, "But how is it God's mercy that you were in this prison this whole time?" Right? He's trying to still figure out if everything's Krishna's mercy. And the minister said, "Well, I usually tour the kingdom with you, and I have all 10 fingers." So, can you think of a time in your life when you were going through something and you don't understand what is if you're a devotee of Krishna, what is Krishna doing to me? If you're a theist, what is God doing to me? And then in hindsight, and it's really disturbing. And then maybe 2 days later, 2 months later, 2 years later, you think, "Oh, that was mercy." Does anyone have that experience in your life? Yeah, a lot of us. Okay, yeah. Me too. I won't tell you because it's embarrassing. So think of a time when you were dealing with a reversal in your life. Okay, it could be. You don't have to share. You don't have to share this with anyone. So so think of the most, whatever, a big thing, a small thing. Just try to get that in your mind when you were dealing with some challenge, some reversal, some difficulty in life. Might have been relationship-wise, it might have been health, might have been work, whatever it was, your favorite sports team, whatever. So if you could go back to that time, it might have been 2 days ago or 2 decades ago, but if you can remember what went through your mind at that time. What was your thought process like? And so internally, what was going on internally? And then, do you remember how you dealt externally or practically with the situation? So just we're not going to call on anyone right now. Right now, just keep that in your mind, that situation and those questions as we go through our talk today. And by the way, this is not a lecture. This is not, I want this to be interactive. Anytime you have a comment or a question, please just raise your hand and let's keep this. And this is not death by PowerPoint, and nor is it hopefully death by lecture. So please, let's keep this interactive like that. Okay. So anytime, please. I thrive on that. So don't be shy. Okay. All right. So, what are some unhealthy ways to deal with reversals? What do you think are some yes?
Revenge.
Revenge. Okay. Yes. If it's with another person, I'll show you. Okay. Eye for an eye. What else? Yes. Anger. Okay. Anger. Getting. You ever notice that sometimes if you're really angry at someone, you really have an enemy, you can think of them sometimes more intensely than a loved one. Does anyone have that? I mean, we have that example in the Shastra, in the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Kamsa, he was he was a great devotee in the sense that he was so much thinking of Krishna. It wasn't anukul, it wasn't favorable, but he was like just another not such nice person. Shishupal was like that also, just like always thinking of Krishna, but not so favorably. But anger, yeah, could be. Yeah, what else? Yes?
Denial.
Denial. What is that saying? Denial ain't a river in Egypt? Right? Yeah, denial, yes. Yes?
Blame the circumstances.
Blame the circumstances, yes, yeah. Blame anything except yourself,
Yes.
right? Yeah. My wife, I mentioned, was a school principal, and if something really bad was going on in the classroom, they would call her in. She's a daughter of a general. She said, "Who did this?" And every kid goes, like that. Everyone except me, right? Yeah, so blame something else. We already heard from you. You're like you're so enthusiastic. No, go ahead.
Finding fault
Finding fault with
others.
with others or with the situation also, perhaps. Yes, Prabhu?
Like panicking.
Panicking, yeah, that's me. You got me, yeah.
Expressing. Saying all kinds of harsh things.
Saying harsh things, yeah, harsh words. Yeah, and you know what happens? We say something that's harsh, and people, when we're really, if in the Bhagavad Gita, they have the 3 modes of nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. And when we're really influenced by passion or ignorance, we'll sometimes say things that we actually don't really mean about the other person, but they blurt out. And then the other person thinks, now I know what he really thinks about me. Right? And they get us at our lowest, so to speak. So yes, someone? Yes.
I guess self-incrimination or,
The opposite of blaming everyone is just getting totally on your own case. Yeah, right, yes, you just, very good. Yes?
Not expressing.
Not expressing, yeah, just keeping it all inside.
Yes.
No one, you don't have a friend that you can vent to. And these are all great, gosh, yes?
Blame it on my karma.
Blame it on your karma. Okay, yeah, why not? All right, yes?
Emotional suppression.
Emotional suppression, that's very connected to what Prabhuji, what this devotee said also, yes, yeah. Yeah, just keeping it, we don't have time tonight, but we have a whole presentation on friendship and how important friendship is to have someone to vent to, someone you can trust, that you can tell what's going on in your life, and it's not going to end up in Instagram 2 minutes later, something like that. Yeah, really important. Okay, these are great. So these are the unhealthy ways to deal with, and I'm sure there are more. Is that anyone? One last one? Anyone? Yes.
No accountability.
No accountability. Yes, that's right. Yeah, that's good. Yes, no account to yourself, to others. Yeah, good. So let's talk about 2 axiomatic. Just they axiomatic means like they just are 2 axiomatic truths that will be the basis of our talk today. Okay, that like that. So one of them is. In conflict, in my field in conflict resolution, one of the causes of conflict is unclear expectations, right? Imagine going into a marriage and you don't talk about how many children you want to have. Then after you're married, the wife wants 3 and the husband wants 1. And you can imagine the war that goes on then, right? If you don't talk about that up front, a good organization has good onboarding, right? When you join the company, they tell you all about when you get leave and when how the pay increase goes and everything. And then bad companies say, here's the computer, good luck, right? So Krishna really gives clear expectations in the Bhagavad Gita about this world. He doesn't. Both of these do. That word alaya in Sanskrit and Hindi. Like, what does Bhojan alaya mean? The place of what? Of food, right. Bhog means food, right. Okay. What does Oshodalaya mean? The place, place you get medicine, yes. So Krishna says Dukhalaya. The place you get what? You get misery. So he certifies it. And then later, a very similar anityam, right? Nitya means eternal, anitya means temporary, and sukha means happiness. And asukha. So really, Krishna's doing a really good job in the Gita, Bhagavad Gita, of clarifying expectations. Because I think if most of us are honest, we'll think that generally life is good, but every now and then there's a problem. Right? But from Krishna's point of view, it's like mostly there's problems, and every now and then there's something good, or at least that can be, an expectation. So this is an axiomatic truth. Any thoughts on it? Questions, comments? Just let me know. And then one more axiomatic truth. Krishna is really kind. Always. He doesn't have a bad hair day. Like that. So this couple of quotes. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is most benevolent because his only desire is to make people happy. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is an incarnation of Krishna. Appeared 500 years ago. Can you imagine? God's only desire is to make people happy. And then here, Prabhupada, this is a talk he was giving in Tokyo, actually. Krishna is always our natural friend. That is stated in Bhagavad Gita, Suridam Sarvabhutanam. There are different names in Sanskrit for different kinds of friends. One friend is called Bandhu, official friend. Another is called Mitra, social friend. Krishna says, I am Surit, which means a friend who sincerely wants your happiness. A Surit is a real friend. Krishna is Surit. He's always wishing my good. So these two axiomatic truths. There's of course others, but this is very important when we're thinking about, lemon to lemonades. This is what God is all about. He's not. I come from the Jewish background, and we sometimes talk about a jealous God. God really just wants us to be happy and to have a relation by having a true relationship with Him. Okay, so with those two axiomatic truths, what is the first one? Place of misery, and of course, what's the second one? Duh, it's right here. All right, so what should be our expectations? If you combine these two truths, what might that tell us about our lives and viewing and reacting to adversity? So if you take those two truths and you combine, think about it, you can take a minute to think about them. If you think about, this material world's kind of a place of suffering, and Krishna's our dearmost friend. So if you combine those two, how might that impact the way we deal with adversity? Yes?
I guess it puts us at ease because
It puts us
at ease. We don't
at ease? I don't understand Australian.
Yeah. So
Oh, sorry, bad joke.
in this material world, we're to expect miseries, and Krishna's always on our side, wishing the best for us. Then it just eases our mind.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Prabhu?
It feels like when parents make your life miserable by scolding you or something.
When parents make your lives miserable by scolding you.
Then you have to think that why are they scolding me? They have my good interest in their minds. So, like an example to.
Okay, so there's some reason behind the challenges in life.
So that's why Krishna makes the world dukkhalayam, so that you remember him and
Okay.
don't forget your goals.
All right, so you're bringing up an important point that we'll talk about a little bit more later. Really important point that there's something behind the suffering. There's a lesson. I saw a hand up here. No? Yes.
I was going to say something similar, that in the circumstance of adversity, we should know that there's some element of kindness in the experience.
Some element of kindness. Yeah, or if we take, the last, not just an element, but the total kindness behind it. Yeah. What else?
Krishna doesn't want us to stay here because
Ah.
it's a place of the suffering. So
Right.
Real friends, you want them to go back home.
Yeah, this is not our real home. And that's in the 8th chapter of the Gita and many places. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Patience.
Patience. Nice. You want to elaborate on that, please?
If we assume that there is a kindness behind the pain, then if we wait, we'll be able to see it.
Nice. There's of the 6 aspects of that help us become advanced in bhakti. Utsaha nishchaya dharyat. Dharyat means patience. So enthusiasm, confidence, and patience. So yeah, patience. Yeah, very nice. Okay, so now those thoughts that we just heard from all of you saintly people here, compare that to the reaction that we in the first example, in your own life. Did you deal with patience? Did you seek Krishna's kindness? Saturated with kindness and things like that, or was it a little bit more like what we shouldn't do? Again, I'm not going to ask you, but maybe if you have any thoughts about that, we'd love to hear it. Was it the same? Was it different?
Depends on the day.
Depends on the day. Sri Radharaman, you were going, no, it wasn't the same.
No, when I face my worst, darkest place, I find I go to my deepest instinctive response, which
And-
isn't from my best place.
And what is that distinctive response?
You really want to know?
Yeah, well, if you want to say it, you don't have to.
I actually go quite introverted and I won't come out.
Okay.
I hide
Yeah, hide.
with what I'm experiencing.
All right.
Yeah, but it's not my best place.
Yeah, well, join the crowd.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Or who else? Yes.
It takes a long time to get over the voices of your mind, to get to the place where you can hear that Krishna's kind.
Yes.
It's like I sort of know it intellectually, but there's a lot of turmoil.
You're on the same page as your son about patience. Yeah. Yes. And let me see if that's the next verse. It's coming up, but maybe we'll go to that now just because you're bringing that up. It's so important. This verse. So this is the verse for this presentation. This is the verse, okay? And we'll see in a minute that our founder, Prabhupada, said, this verse should be the guide for all spiritualists. Okay, so let's spend a minute dissecting this verse and then look at it in light of what Jagatrini Mataji just said. Okay? So this is the verse. So first, Tateno kampam sukshamikshamano bunjana evatma ritam vipakam ridvagva purbir vididham namaste jiveta yomukti padesa daibak. Now I didn't put every word for word, but I put some of the key words. So tate means your. This is Lord Brahma speaking to Krishna. And he says, Anukam means compassion, and su samikshamana, be earnestly hoping for. So, being convinced of that second axiomatic truth, that Krishna, God, is all kindness, all love, all caring. So, earnestly hoping, and that's also the word, remember expectations, we said about clear expectations. So, expecting Krishna's compassion, hoping for it. You might even say in another context, loyam, which means like agreed for it. I'm expecting it and I can get it, because Krishna is like that. And then, bunjana, enduring, atma kritam. Who had said karma? Prabhu, you said karma, right? Yes, right. So, atma kritam, you did it to yourself. Vipakam, my karma. So then enduring the results of our karma, the good, the bad, the not so good, the not so bad, all the stuff that happens to us, right? So enduring that, and as we're enduring that with hrid, the heart, vak, our words, vapurbi, our body, offering namastes, offering our love, our devotion, our respect to Krishna. And one who can do that Jiveta lives is a liberated soul. It's their rightful claim. So, my dear Lord, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions, the karma, of his past misdeeds, and offering respectful obeisances with heart, words, and body, is surely eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim. This is the very, very powerful, and in light of what Jagatrini Mataji was saying, I find that you can't push somebody towards this verse. Like, you gotta. It's all Krishna's mercy. It's all Krishna's mercy, right? As you were saying, you're not necessarily ready for it. You haven't digested it yet. But I find you walk alongside someone with this verse, and as they go forward, you go forward, and you just patiently. If we're talking about now helping someone else who's going through difficulties, right? We just are there to listen to them, to help them vent when they have to, help them maybe express their doubts when they have them, and you just, taking Jay's point, you patiently walk with them, and eventually they hopefully come to this kind of consciousness. Because this kind of consciousness means basically that you're not in the material world anymore. Because part of the material world, we do this, and we especially do that towards God. Right? We blame him ultimately for things that a lot of us do. So in the explanation for this verse, our founder Prabhupada says, this statement of Srimad-Bhagavatam should be the guide of all devotees. A devotee who is not perfectly free from resultant actions, karma, should therefore continue to act in Krishna consciousness seriously, even though there may be so many impediments. When such impediments arise, he should simply think of Krishna and expect his mercy. And then I love this last sentence. That is his only solace. That is the only solace. So this is actually quite, you can do lemon to lemonades kind of in a superficial way, could put a smiling face on things, and it's all good. But we're actually talking about some really deep spiritual stuff here. That is the only solace. So please, anytime, question or comment, because I'm going to go ahead a little bit, but yes.
There are two words that I focused on. We have to endure. On the first line, we endure. On the shloka.
Okay.
Yeah. Bhujana, so endure.
Oh yeah, endure, right. Okay. Bhujana.
Yeah. So that's related to our reaction to whatever has happened with us.
Yeah.
Endure.
Yeah.
I wanted a bit of elaboration on that.
Endure.
Because when I asked you that, sorry.
Go ahead.
Completing that question. What I asked you is because there are several this doesn't mean no reaction at all, right? There has to be some reaction. For example, Arjuna had a reaction on the battlefield with the arrows. That was a reaction, but it was in Krishna consciousness. But Krishna was right there, clean, clear, you do it for Krishna. But this enduring might be a bit hazy in our...
Well, thank you for bringing that up. That's really helpful, because the word, when I think of what comes to your mind when you hear the word endure? Maybe somebody could check it up on their phone. What's its dictionary definition?
Put up with it. Yeah, just put up with it.
Put up with it? Tolerate, yeah. Suffer. Tolerate the suffering. Yeah. Yeah, right. Like, some of you may be enduring this presentation tonight, right? Well, right? So, yeah, enduring does seem to, you actually do experience some unhappiness or some pain. It's not, I'm really glad you brought that up, because it's not just saying, no, it's all good. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Ram. The way I like to think about it also in terms of time is you have something that happens to us here, and then you have this comes up in a few slides from now, and you have like you were saying, the theory that yes, we should see that this is God's mercy, and that can sometimes take a long time, right? So one way I see of becoming more spiritually advanced is the amount of time shortens between something happening and we think, oh yeah, Krishna, Hare Krishna, right? We take shelter of Krishna. We find we see that Krishna is our only solace. Thank you for that. Does that help at all? Does that answer or address your question or your concern?
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, I mean. Okay, no, it didn't. Yeah, but.
That's the solace.
That's the solace, yes, yeah. But, yeah, go ahead, Jay.
Enduring. How do we know when we should do something and rather than just endure? So like boundaries or actions. So enduring sort of seems very passive.
Yeah. Yeah, well, now you bring up all these things. That's later. You know, should I give you a post-dated check? No. Well, one lesson is in the 8th chapter, 7th verse of the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu. Then he says these 4 important words. Mam, what does that mean? Krishna is saying me. Mam anusmara. Anyone know what the word anusmara means? Remembering. So mam anusmara. And in this case, what was Arjuna's job? He was an IT professional, but he was working. So yudhya cha. So it's basically Krishna saying, remember me first, and then deal with reality. In his case, it was fighting. In our case, it might be being a doctor, a lawyer, an IT professional, engineer. Those are the only 4 options you have, right? Sorry. Hare Krishna. I've lived in India too long. I told you 21 years. Right. But that will come up a little bit more, but it's a really good point. Because sometimes you can just endure, or you were saying you kind of go into your shell. And when is it, oh geez, I don't know if I should quote, I can't remember the singer's name. Kenny Rogers. Anyway, it's about gambling, but you have to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, and know when to run, if you know the song. Anyway, sorry about that. But, time, place, and circumstance, what to do when. Yeah. And sometimes it really helps. That's a really good time to have friends. Because even from like a Bhagavad Gita point of view, when these things happen, passion and ignorance are clouding our vision, and we're so into it sometimes we can't see the forest from the trees. And to have a good friend that we trust, we know will be confidential, and it will be honest with us, not just say, no, it's okay, but we'll sometimes say, you fool, what are you thinking, right? Have that kind of friendship can be so helpful. A person who's a little bit more, in the balcony looking down at what you're dealing with. So there's more to answering that, but let's go on, and then not because I'm concerned with time, because we go till 11 o'clock. Whoops.
If we are going to 11 o'clock, I have a question.
Okay. What time do we go to?
Depends how much we can endure.
Okay. All right, time's up. It's over.
No, we can go till 7:45.
Okay, thank you. Did you really have a question? Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm just contemplating on that word, which is therefore continue.
Which one?
A devotee who is not perfectly free
Right.
from the resultant actions should therefore continue to act in Krishna consciousness.
Yes.
So that act is really to act or pretend to act?
No, he means really to act, not like make believe you're Krishna conscious. But the point there is, Prabhupada used to give this really nice example that when you have an overhead fan, and then you turn it off, and for some time it still goes around, right? So that's kind of like the karma for a devotee. We pulled the plug, we're not getting any more karma because we're being good boys and girls. And the results from the past karma is going away, but dire, it's not happening all at once. So that's why a devotee is not perfectly freed. That's what he's referring to. The fan's still going around a little bit.
Excuse me, Vraja.
Yeah.
I didn't really understand his point, to act or to pretend to act.
He just meant like the word act could be taken like in a drama, you know, yeah.
Imitate.
Yeah, but
Imitate.
imitating, yeah. Of course, we do sometimes fake it till you make it. I mean, you know, we may not be fully a devotee, but we still, you know, work on it, and gradually we get there, I think, hopefully. Yes?
My experience is that when there's a critical situation, my mind becomes tense.
Becomes tense?
And I look for some assistance, and when I simply think of Krishna, or I read Bhagavad Gita, or I pick up a book or something like that, it seems to be too high, and it's so theoretical and so logically, spiritually, whatever, whereas I'm swirling around with some emotional state.
Yeah.
And so it helped me that it's not only, as Prabhupada has put it there, how I would think that, you know, you simply think of Krishna, that wouldn't work for me at that moment, but you added on that you can talk to someone.
Yes.
And that is also part of the soul, it's not that only thinking of Krishna.
Right.
In that sort of like, oh, I have to think of Krishna now.
Yeah, or it could be, that's fantastic what you said, yeah. In addition, it might be, what part of Krishna do you think of? Like Bhagavad Gita is very philosophical. And sometimes we're just not ready, right, Brenda? We're not always ready for the philosophy. Would you agree? Yeah, sometimes you just want to hear stories about Krishna. Yeah, see, she agrees. So sometimes maybe just, you know, listen to a dramatic reading of Krishna book. Maybe I can handle that. But, you know, Sarva Dharmam Parityaya, you know, right. But
you're going to vent, you're going to go over and over and over and over and over at that time, so that the Krishna consciousness seems irrelevant, because I'm going to go over and over and over and over something.
The mind goes on a hamster wheel, right? And 83% of our thoughts are repetitive and useless, according to one survey. That's scary when you think about it. But the other thing is, let's be honest, when the going gets tough, the tough turn on Netflix. Right? Isn't it? Or YouTube, or go shopping, or doom scrolling, right? On Instagram. You know, when you laugh, it usually means there's some truth to it, right?
It's the absolute truth.
It's the absolute truth, yeah, because it's kind of what Jagatrini Machi was saying. You want to distract your mind. You want, you know, or we take shelter of food. Does anyone do that? Yeah, right? Or, you know, what do they say? If the going gets tough, the tough go shopping. So, right? Yeah. Yes, for some of us, shopping. Yeah. For, you know, when we're in Vrindavan, you can't. Shopping's a little tough, but Amazon is there and delivers in 2 days. Or Flipkart. Yeah. So the point is, we do sometimes look for distractions. So part of that, what you're talking about, is to really consider what's a healthy distraction and what's a not so healthy distraction. And it's usually good to think about that, not when you're in the midst of it, but when you're kind of cool and calm, so that when something does happen in life, you already, I decided I was going to go for a walk, right? Or I'm going to, do some yoga or whatever. In America, anyway, some people, when I teach this to people who are not devotees in America, some of them actually like to go to shooting ranges and take their guns out, and they find that very calming. Or they go in their truck and blast heavy metal music, and they find that to be peaceful. I go, really? Okay. So let's talk about external circumstances. Okay? Because when life seems out of control, we tend to want Krishna's help to change the externals, right? We get some diagnosis, and we, hope that the test was wrong or something like that, or some financial situation, we immediately want to, fix that. There's nothing wrong with either of those, but that's usually our first thing, is to deal with the externals. And that would be different than when we said mam anusmara yudhyacha, right? And we should work to abandon the notion that our circumstances have to change. Now, certainly we want them to, especially in those examples I just gave, but that's the only way I'm going to be happy, if my finances really get better, or if my relationship with this, whatever, or this person loses their job, whatever it is that, the circumstances. But external circumstances, they're dictated by our karma. And then ultimately, at least Krishna is sanctioning. We don't blame him, but he created this world. So the freedom really lies in our response and our attitude. And that is a choice. That is a choice that we have. Like, choosing Netflix or going for a walk in nature or something like that. And we have that choice, right? In the end of the Bhagavad Gita, after all of these instructions, and Krishna tells Arjuna exactly what to do, says, "Now do as you wish to do." That's my favorite line, probably for not such great reasons, but anyway, yeah. But it's so nice, because Krishna acknowledges our free will. There's a nice way to distinguish between free will and destiny, or karma and free will. And that is, let me see if I can remember this. Height is karma and weight is free will. That make sense? Okay. I know it takes a minute to catch, okay, what? All right, yeah. Right, okay. So, this is an important, I like the delayed reaction here, Australia is a little like that. All right. External circumstances, we just sometimes, that's the way I'm going to be happy, when they change. But often what's happening is Krishna is working on us in a different way. And this whole idea of discontentment, that we really should beware of discontentment, and it's throwing blame on the imperfection of all the problem is out there. Right? Because discontentment, interestingly, it's actually an internal state that's independent of the external circumstances. We can actually feel close to Krishna even when we're going through, really challenging things in our life. And that's often, Krishna's the expert surgeon, and he's actually doing, sometimes it feels like open heart surgery without an anesthesia, anesthetic. Is that the right word? Yeah. So it's better if it's again, remember we said this is actually high stuff. This is not, this is really deep spirituality we're talking about now, okay? Better to see discontentment as Krishna's calling us closer to him. We tend to blame all that is out there, and then we miss the point. We miss the lesson. And what's interesting in relationship with God is that, when you go to school, you get the lesson and then you take the exam, right? But often in bhakti, you get the test, and then after the test, you learn the lesson. It's backwards, isn't it? Right? So that's interesting like that, isn't it? And the results can be internal peace regardless of the external circumstances. And that's really the lemonade. Because, you may not, if you had, if you were in the stock market right now, it might be going down after our dear president in America, ostensibly from America. And, you might not be able to change that. But how you view that, and it's also this is another presentation. But we can sometimes, because a lot of this is in the mind, when our mind is concerned, let's say about finances, then we can ask ourselves, what is it about this situation that is really important to me? What's the real challenge here? And you might find if you ask yourself, what's the real challenge here 2 or 3 times, you get to a much deeper place than just, you lost 6% in the stock market the last 2 months. right? It might be, there's deeper things than just that 6% thing, or even if it's going up. We can also, by the way, if you ever experience this, we can have some not very spiritual reactions to happiness in our life as well. Right? It can also, so it's not only the lemons.
For example?
Well, I'll get a little Shastrik on you. In the 4th chapter of the Gita, Krishna talks about 4 kinds of Sukritinas, pious people, and it's Arto, Jigyasar, Artarti, and Gyani. So Arto and Artarti is the desire of wealth. So it says 4 kinds of people approach God. And one of them is desire of wealth, and one of persons who's in misery. The problem is once those go better, let's say, your distress goes away or your finances get better, then you go up to God and you say, don't call us, we'll call you. Have a nice day. I'm getting on with my life, right? So sometimes we can be elated and completely forget about Krishna. Or take credit for ourselves, just it's because of me only. And that, Krishna says in the 18th chapter of the Gita, there's 5 reasons for things happening. We're one of them. Right? There's other causes. And ultimately it's Krishna's. Is that answer? Yeah? Anything else before we move on? Am I boring you, Brenda? No? Oh, good. Thank you. It's easy to remember her name because it's written right here. Okay. So this is the idea, right? We talked about this already. There's a stimulus. Viktor Franklin came up with this. He was a person who was in the concentration camps. And, there's a stimulus, and then we usually have a very quick response. So the idea in spiritual life, or even just good life in general, is to put a pause as much as we can and think, what would be the best reaction to this situation? Right? We could, think of what Krishna teaches in the Bhagavad Gita, or think of what would be a kind-hearted approach, a compassionate approach, an honest reaction. But often there's no pause, right? Or this is, the idea is to put some, even if the pause is momentary, it can be really significant in our life. I mean, you could say in one sense, this is a way to lead a good life. Because there's all kinds of stimuli. Person cuts you off in the, when you're driving in the highway tonight, and how are you going to respond to that? Or you get a flat tire or whatever. I'm not wishing anyone a flat tire or cutting off, But that pause is really where life happens, and certainly where Krishna consciousness happens as well. I thought you were raising your hand, you're scratching your head. All right. You have to be careful about scratching your head around here. Yeah. Some thoughts on this? What thoughts do you have? Yes?
It's interesting if you can find that space to think about someone else's feeling. Generally, the stimulus and the response is all about us. So if you can find that space within in between when you are either the other person involved, or how you can envisage someone else would deal with someone that you respect, someone that you...
I'm not sure if I follow.
Well, within that...
I'm sure I'm not following, actually.
Within that space...
Okay, the pause.
Yes, within the pause. If you can think about what someone else is feeling...
Yeah.
...outside of what you're feeling... That's one. And also, there's 2 there really. One is that, and the other is thinking how someone else that you respect might deal with this.
Yes. Okay, so 2 things there. One is about empathy. Krishna talks about empathy in Bhagavad Gita, actually, that the yogi, I forget the exact English, but by seeing himself, sees the true needs of other people. I'm getting it wrong, the needs of other people, but...
Happiness and negative stress.
Okay, do you know the whole?
Comparison with his own self, sees the true quality of everyone in both their happiness.
Sees the true quality of everyone, both in their happiness. Thank you. Yes. Empathy is, obviously a super powerful thing. And then your other point was?
You think about how someone else that you respect
would
deal with
that's scary for me because I think, oh God, I didn't respond the way a really good devotee would respond. Yeah. And we're fortunate because we have, like even in this community, we have so many good examples, such as your good self and Jagatrini Mataji and Yadushrestha Prabhu and so many others. And we also we're so lucky that we have all these recordings of Prabhupada and how he responded to different things. Yeah. And of course, Mother Jagatrini had so many personal experiences of that with Prabhupada. Yeah. This is a powerful concept. Other thoughts? Okay. Yes.
Growth. So it sounds like growth is expanding that pause, where it's unconscious to conscious.
Well, I guess as long as you're not talking about time-wise, right? It's like when I train mediator. I'm a mediator myself, and so I can't somebody says something. I say, "Wait a second," and I take out my handbook and look page 27. Ah, yes, here's the reply. But I'd say, yeah. I mean, expanding the doing it and doing it well. Yeah. There's ways to. You ever heard this progression of how you learn something? You're first unconscious incompetent. You've heard of that? Those 4 stages. You don't know what you don't know, and then let's say maybe you weren't even thinking about how to spiritually react to Christ's challenges in our life before today. So now we're conscious incompetent. We know that we have to work on this. And then we work on it, we become conscious competent. We have to think about it, but you're really getting good at the pause. And eventually you become unconscious competent. It just becomes second nature. You become so good at it that it just becomes, that's how we learn to ride a bicycle, that's how we learn to drive a car, and it's also the way we can learn this.
Is there a risk in this that, say, a type of person who has a tendency not to respond as their response may not respond and leave the situation in an unhealthy state?
I guess, although this is saying there should be a response, it just should be a good one. Yeah, but I guess someone could, pretty much any model you use, you could mess up. Yes.
Sometimes it's very difficult to find that space to pause, right? Like the stimulus can be emotional, it could be physical.
Yeah.
It could happen so quickly that the response also happens really quickly. So how do you find that, moment to just take a deep breath and pause, because it sometimes happens so quickly?
Well, you're right. I mean, sometimes obviously you're not going to have time for a big pause, right? So first of all, acknowledging you're correct. Sometimes things are just too quick. Okay. Another way to look at it is to prepare ourselves ahead of time. And that is, for example, getting up early in the morning or whatever we consider early and doing some spiritual activities, chanting on beads or hearing Bhagavad Gita or whatever, we do to kind of get balanced, maybe do some meditate, So in other words, be more sattvic, be more in the mode of goodness. Sattva sanjayate jnanam, the Bhagavad Gita says, in the mode of goodness, knowledge comes. So even if we have to do split-second things sometimes, if we're really had a real grounded morning, and we're really kind of a good morning, right? We got up, we didn't the second I'm sure none of you do this, okay? I'm obvious that none of you do this, but some people in the world, when they wake up, first thing they do is look at their phone. And I know none of you do that. You're supposed to laugh. Oh, she's laughing. Okay, good. Right, but we can think about because a good start to the day can make this a lot easier, even if we only have splits. But acknowledging it, sometimes you don't. But at least we can learn in hindsight. Oh, okay, that's how I responded. Not too bad, but I could have done a little better. I could have done this. But being, having a good morning is so important, you know. There's this one devotee, his name is Gauranga Prabhu. He lives in a beautiful place called the Govardhan Eco Village in about 3 hours from Mumbai. And he has this seminar that he talks about protecting your 9 to 9. Your 9 at night till 9 in the morning. Now, some of us, you know, have to go to work earlier than that, but, you know, whatever it is, 9 to 7, 9 to 6, but having that time being really sacred. And it's amazing what a difference the rest of the day makes. It's like, it's a whole different ball game. You know, as opposed to getting up late and then doom scrolling right when you wake up and you get some nasty email from your boss or from your cousins, sisters, brothers, aunts, or whatever, you know, right? And then that's on your mind instead of, you know, spiritual things. Is that all right? Yeah. Yes?
So in terms of actually practicing, so you know how you talk about the unconscious competence, like practicing this, how would you say that what you just mentioned is a way to like actually practice it?
Yeah, or at least it's a way to get really good at this, right? Just being in a good. I'm sure we all know. You know when you're kind of, I don't know. Again, this might be when you're firing on all cylinders. You know, when things are good. You know, you got a good sleep. You ate a healthy breakfast. You know, you maybe went for a walk, you maybe chanted Hare Krishna or whatever you do, you know, read the Bhagavad Gita or did spiritual things. You're really kind if you're married to your spouse and the kids are all ready for school and things are just like, you know, going well. This does make it easier to do this because that you're more influenced by the mode of goodness. So they would help do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay, how are we doing? Okay, still got a few minutes left. So the story of Narada Muni, it's one example from the first canto of the Bhagavatam. He was a 5-year-old kid. And he was, and his mother went out one day to milk a cow, and she got bitten by a snake. And she died. Imagine that. But he was such a spiritualist that this was his reaction. I took this as a special mercy of the Lord, who always desires benediction for his devotees, and so thinking, I started for the north. Now, we may not be on the level of Narada Muni, but just imagine that. He's this young man, and he just had, you know, he had such a spiritual, and he just immediately, that time between, you know, that time was like this, right? The time between some really terrible thing. I mean, he must have been totally distraught. Right? Who wouldn't be distraught at that age to have their mom pass away? Right? And he was totally dependent on her, it says in the Bhagavatam. And then he just said, somehow by Krishna's mercy, he saw this is God's mercy, and he just going to the north meant he traveled seeing, depending on Krishna, basically, in a nutshell. What an but it's an extreme, but an amazing example. So what to practically do? We've been talking about that all along, sort of. We quoted this verse already. Mam anusmara yudhyacha. So to think of Krishna and then act. There's a beautiful, in the 7th canto of the 7th chapter of the 1st canto, this very terrible weapon is coming fast at Arjuna. And I know, if I was Arjuna, I would have said, Krishna, help! Right? But he actually says these like 2 or 3 or 4 beautiful prayers, and then he says, oh, by the way, can you help out here? So he did a Mama Nusmara before he asked Krishna. So he was, such a great devotee. So prayer is very powerful. Let's talk a little bit about prayer. When we pray, if you can, focus on Krishna rather than the problem. It's not so easy, but just to think of how loving, that whole, and what can we think of? I love this, I got this from His Grace Bhurijana Prabhu, this combination that Krishna is all powerful and he's all loving, or he's Bhakta Vatsal is the Sanskrit, that he's inclined to his devotee. It's a great combination. because if somebody is all powerful but not all loving, that could be a big problem, right? They have a, bad hair day, right? Watch out, world. And if they're all loving but not all powerful, they may be really nice to hang out with, but they can't do much for you. But Krishna can do both. He is both. So then we can, turn our problem to Krishna because we first remembered him, and, declare our surrender and dependence on him. And we can talk openly and honestly to Krishna. In the Nectar of Devotion, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, there's two kinds of prayers. There's prayers reciting other great people's prayers, but there's also making your own prayers. And, we can talk to Krishna and, be honest with him. If you can't, that's the best person to be honest with, because he already knows, in one sense, where we're at. Yeah. But prayer is entering into a relationship. It's a very powerful thing to do. And to first pray and focus on Krishna instead of the problem. Like that. I heard that. Okay, shall we carry on? Oops, I saw someone trying to take a picture of that. You got it? All right, yes.
But a question on the last one. Tell Krishna openly and...
This one?
No, the
this
last
one?
point of the...
Oh.
Yes.
Tell Krishna openly and honestly how you feel. You can...
So, yeah.
I mean, I sometimes say, listen, Krishna, I know I shouldn't be asking you for this. I know I should just be remembering you and leaving everything up to you, but, can you give a guy a break? But I don't really want to pray like that, Krishna, because I know, no, I'm supposed to just anyabi lashita. So you just, like that. You know that story about the devotee who goes to the temple, goes up to Krishna and says, "My dear Lord, what is eternity to you?" And Krishna replies, amazingly enough, eternity is just a moment, just a moment. He says, okay. My dear Lord, what's like $5 billion to you? And Krishna says, it's just some change. So the devotee thinks, Krishna, can you spare some change? And Krishna says, yes, just a moment. Yeah. Okay. So he has, so that wasn't maybe the most honest openly, that was, but we can have a discussion with Krishna. This is where I'm at, this is where I want to be. And could you please help me get there? Because I really, when push comes to shove, everything else comes and goes, but my relationship with you is eternal. And I really want to deepen my relationship with you. So, and then it's about trusting Krishna. So willfully trust, I should have put these one after another, but willfully trust the caring and unfailing affection Krishna has for his servants. He actually unfailingly has concern and love for each one of us in this room. And then we can dwell on those words of comfort. Ananyas chintayantomam yejana paripasate. Right? He says, I preserve what you have, I carry what you lack. And he's asked us to trust that we are neither alone. Can you ever feel like that? You were saying you kind of feel alone. We're not abandoned, we're not forgotten. Ever. And this thing, we have to work on this. This trust is intentional, aggressive, proactive choice of our will to do that. And I like this last part. We walk by faith, not by sight. For Krishna's workings are often carried out beyond our view. And remember that first question I asked? I said, have you ever had a time when you're really in the midst of something, you're saying, what's going on here? Why is God doing this to me? And then later you say, oh, that was Krishna's mercy. So that's why we try to walk, because often Krishna is working on our heart around the corner. We don't see it, around the bend. And that's what's really going on. So we walk by faith rather than just by sight. Yeah. My embarrassing, well, let's see, really quick, my embarrassing story about that was when I was decided not to be a monk anymore. And in those days, basically, we had like at least semi-arranged marriages. So one of my old friends said, "Oh, I got the perfect girl for you." And so we were corresponding a little bit, and she just said, forget it. And I was like, oh, nobody loves me. I was really upset, really like, because I went from like 16 years old to 30 as a monk. And so I was still thinking like a 16-year-old in terms of like boy-girl relationships, because I didn't have any for 14 years. So anyway, then I was introduced to the person who's been my wife now for 37 years. And, I'm very, very fortunate. She's a great devotee, very nice devotee. So when I look back and I say, oh, that was really Krishna's mercy. But at the time, I was feeling sorry for myself and all that, yeah. So trusting Krishna, it's so important. And then just this last point, that we're not, I already said this, we're not just trying to put a smiling face. This is really, what we've been talking about tonight is really a deep spiritual journey. And so why not use the lemon that was put in our life as a real springboard towards transcendence? So we have 4 minutes, so questions, comments, thoughts? Yes, Prabhu.
In that last slide where you mentioned that we walk by faith
Yeah.
and not by sight, the only problem, it's my comment, is what I feel personally, that you had mentioned in the first of the slides that we have a tendency to feel that this problem should go away now.
Uh-huh.
And that is a big hurdle.
Yeah.
Because that's a very undesirable situation to be in. And that dampens, that questions of faith, and we are looking at this, we are walking by the sight.
Yeah, well, I think you answered your own question. In one sense, that little joke I said about, just a moment. Krishna has a different watch than we have. You ever notice that? And what we think is like, this has been 3 weeks, Krishna, what's going on? And to have that trust. But also it ties in with what Jay was saying is, when do you know what to act? When to act, when to be patient. Having good friends is one thing. Also, have we done this? Have we prayed? Have we taken shelter? Have we thought clearly about the situation? It's not just a science. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. It's a life. It's an art. Yeah, and we become better at it also as our relationship with Krishna deepens. And so this is really, in one sense, what this whole presentation is just about is deepening our relationship with Krishna. It's really, and then taking things that happen in our regular day-to-day life and use those as an impetus. Not just when we go to the temple, not just when we're reading the Bhagavatam or something like that, but in our day-to-day functioning, learning to see Krishna's hand in things and use those as a springboard to deepen our relationship with Him, because that's what He wants. Just like in the chapter 9:26 of the Gita, He says, "Patram pushpam phalam toyam, yo me bhakti." He says, if you offer me a leaf, a flower, fruit, or water, I'll accept it. He's not asking for, anyone here Gujarati? Okay, he's not asking for dal dokali, even though that's the best, that's my favorite food in the whole world. But the word bhakti is mentioned twice in that verse, twice. And then he says, asnami, I accept that. So really what he wants is to enter into a loving relationship with us. And we at least know theoretically that that's what's going to satisfy the heart. The heart's looking for satisfaction. The heart's yearning for a loving relationship that's unending and ever increasing. That's actually our need. And the other things are they're not as important in ones ultimately. Okay, time's up. Thank you so much for listening and Hare Krishna.
Can we check? We're good to go. Can we check the kitchen?
Is there a space between that?
What's that, Prabhu?
Is there the space between you and undergo? Is there a reason behind it?
The space?
Is there a rationale behind that?
That's a little typo.
What's a typo?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's very esoteric. You really have to read into it. It's like a, yeah. Yeah. I just put there on purpose.
Just to see if anyone.
Yeah, see if anyone noticed the thing.
We have a little more time.
We have a little more time.
10 minutes.
Okay, we can do a song and a dance. Other comments, questions? Oh, yes, Brenda.
What does dwell mean?
What does dwell? Is the word dwell there? Oh, okay, let's find out. Okay, dwell, okay. What does dwell mean? I chose that word. It means to meditate on or to really think deeply about. Okay? So think deeply about Krishna's words of comfort. Like when Krishna says, so the story that's told about this, it's the 9th chapter, 22nd verse of the Gita. Krishna says that to those who are constantly devoted, I preserve what you have and I carry what you lack. And the story that's often told about this is a great devotee. His name was Arjuna-Acharya. You've heard of Arjuna? Yeah, so Arjuna-Acharya is not Arjuna, but he's a great devotee. And he was often, some great souls, they'll write tikas or commentaries on sacred books, like to give you a greater understanding of them. So he was writing a commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. And he came to this verse, and it says, Yoga Shembam Maham Yaham. He says that Krishna says, I personally preserve what you have and carry what you lack. And he was thinking, Krishna doesn't have to do that personally, he can arrange it. So he actually took his marker, he didn't have a marker in those days, but and he scratched out the word Yoga Shembam, and he put Karomi, which means Krishna is really saying, I arrange for you to preserve what you have and carry what you lack. So he did that, and then he told his wife, okay, I'm going to go to the river and take my afternoon swim. Okay? So when he did that, right after he left, there was a knock on the door. And these two beautiful young boys were there. One very dark complexion. Any guess who that might be? Dark complexion. Another one very white, like the moon last night. So bright, right? And they had with them all this bogo, all this food, all ghee and yogurt and vegetables and all things. And they said, dear Mataji, please take this food. And she was like, oh, thank you so much. This is wonderful. This is great. And she said, please come in. They said, no, we can't come in. We don't want to come in because your husband will come back soon and he's beaten us. They said, what? He's beaten? How did he beat you? How's that? My husband's like this very Paka, Brahmin, Sattvic person. How he beat you? And he said, yes, see? And the dark complexion one showed two marks on his back. And so they ran away. So then Arjuna-Acharya comes back. So in the meantime, his wife cooks the preparations, offers them to Krishna. She starts eating herself, which in those days was not the way you did things. The wife would serve the husband first, or at least at the same time, but not like eat first. So he comes back and he sees his wife, having lunch. He said, Davy, what's going on? And she said, what's going on with you? Why did you beat those two children? And he said, what do you mean? I just came from the river. I didn't beat anybody. And he said, describe them to me. And then he described, of course, who Krishna was. He had peacock feather, and then he realized that Krishna personally preserves what you lack. He personally delivered food just to show him. So he changed that editing. Is that all right? So we can dwell on that Krishna, that he preserves what we have, he carries what he lacks. Or in the 64th verse of the 18th chapter, he says, Istosi me. He says, you are very dear to me. Isn't that nice? Yeah? Very dear to me.
Sometimes when we notice what's going on in our mind,
Uh-huh.
I mentioned in the very first, all the different responses that can be there.
Yeah, we had great ones, yeah.
We had a lot of different responses. We don't feel very comfortable to think about Krishna at that time because our responses are perhaps a little ugly or a little hard, and so these kind of suggestions don't sit well with a disturbed, angry state of mind. So what do we do when our state of mind is so severe, we're fighting, we're angry, we're disturbed? How do we get from where we are when we respond the way we respond to here?
Well, that's why we're presenting this in the evening on a on a Saturday when we're all kind of in a nice mood and everything. We're not going through that. Yes, please.
I actually, at the beginning of my spiritual journey, I had lots of hard feelings and kind of pain and irritation towards people. But for some reason, I had this vision, just like in old times in villages. Elderly people were sitting at home mostly during the winter in Europe because they were not capable to walk in the snow and something. But as soon as first rays of sun were there, they were coming out and they were opening because by sitting at home they developed wounds on their skin and everything just because they didn't wash and all of this. So they were opening all their wounds, all their ugly things to the sun to heal it. And so that's the same, in the same way I felt towards Krishna, that actually it's not that I have to approach him when I'm completely comfortable, because at that time, it's fine. But when I'm ugly in some way, when I'm angry or fearful or something, that's where I have to open up and open all my scars and all my wounds to Krishna, because he's like sun and he will heal it.
Very nice, yeah. And it says that Krishna Surya Sam, Krishna. Jagatturni Matsuri. I could try to come up with a response, but if I recall, there was a time when you were going through some things and then you actually went into Srila Prabhupada's presence. And did that have that kind of effect? Just being with him. I know I've spoken to your husband about that. I don't know if you had the same reactions.
Well, at that time, I was sitting at a distance from Srila Prabhupada. I didn't want to go near him. And I was actually calculating what options I had other than being a devotee. And I was thinking about maybe I could go back to Melbourne. My mother would pay my fare and I could study something. And then in a very involuntary way, little phrases from some verses that I had learned when I first got married. Because when I first got married, we didn't have anything in common. And I was very competitive. Sometimes that happens, the wife's trying to keep up or get ahead. And so we used to memorize Bhagavad Gita verses for a short time. And phrases from those Bhagavad Gita verses started to just sort of enter into my book. And as I heard them, I became aware that they depend on me, work under my protection, just phrases. It turned my attention towards a spiritual approach. And then I was outside, so Prabhupada was in his room, my husband was in the room with him, I was going to go in. I didn't feel capable. And so then he kept coming out to the secretary's room for tasks. And then he'd go back in, and he'd come out and he'd go back in. And each time he'd come past me, he was sitting at a distance, he'd say, go in. And I would say no.
Wow.
And so then, when those verses started to come through my head, I started to soften a little bit. My disturbance started to settle. And then when he came out, he said, go inside. And actually, you know what happened, Raj? Prabhupada was playing in the room. He was playing his dictaphone to my husband of what he had recorded for his Chaitanya that morning.
Mm-hmm.
And simultaneous with those verses, in there I could hear Prabhupada's voice, and he was explaining to my husband through the dictaphone that it is just like you talked about the mad elephant offense.
Mm-hmm.
That if somebody disregards their spiritual master, all their spiritual, gifts become like trampled.
Mm.
And they sort of, like if an elephant gets into a bamboo grove, he smashes everything. And
Right.
I was feeling what Prabhupada was saying, that my spiritual life had become smashed. And so, because he was like a doctor prescribing, and I was experiencing it at that point, I agreed to walk around and sit outside his door, but I wouldn't go inside.
Uh-huh.
So I sat outside and I was listening as he was explaining what happens when one disregards the spiritual master. And then that moment my husband came out and he saw I had come that far, so then he said, go in. And so then at that point I was ready to go into the room.
Oh, nice.
And then that was when he broke.
That was, of course, very special to have his personal. So I was thinking of a more down-to-earth answer to your question is, at least if we just think for that time we can't like pick up the Bhagavad Gita. What is it, what is the name of Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita? Bhagavad Gita as it is, keep it on the shelf as it is. Right? Yeah, so it's a little bit like that. But at least if we can try to find at least some outlet that's not bringing us down further. Like I said, like I just gave some ideas: meditation, a walk, yoga, take some prasad, drown yourself in halava or jalebis or whatever, something that's a distraction, but not something like that, and then we get a little more calmed down, and then we're ready to hear something. That was what crossed my mind. Not that that's an ideal answer. But keep the song and dance going, or we're done? Okay. Again, thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
So, thank you so much to Bihari.